The 25th of March of the year 3019 of the Third Age was to be the fateful day for the inhabitants of Middle-earth. The two hobbits, Frodo and Sam, had managed to break into Mordor and get to Mount Doom undetected. There, on the cracks of Doom, in the center of Sauron's realm, the One Ring was destroyed, and with it the terrible rule of Mordor ended. The mighty tower of Barad-dûr, which had cast a shadow of calamity onto the lands for almost 5,000 years, collapsed, and the Dark Lord Sauron was defeated. But what exactly happened to him that day? What were the consequences of losing the One Ring? Was Sauron really dead? And if not, could he come back one day? Welcome back, Meldonjar, to this latest lesson. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified of the next lesson, where we will look at the one man who could have destroyed Sauron, but chose not to, Isildur. And for those who cannot wait until then, be sure to check our Patreon, where a few dollars allows you to get a say in what subjects we address and earlier access to the next video. However, this week we will ask ourselves, what happened to Sauron after the destruction of the One Ring? Sauron was a Maya, an immortal spirit that existed before the world itself was created. In Ea, the created universe, the Maiar took the position of guardians or angels who shaped the world and watched over it. In their natural forms they were incorporeal and invisible to earthly beings. However, they had the ability to clothe themselves in any shape based on and created by their power and emotions. In the shapes of animals, plants, humans or elves, they could walk the world for all eyes to see. The physical form was not invulnerable though, and could be killed. The Maiar clothed themselves in those bodies and, similar to the clothes we wear, the destruction of them only cost them the power they invested in their creation. The spiritual core, which was the Maya itself, lived on and could, if they were powerful enough, create a new body. In the events before the War of the Ring, this cycle of corporeal destruction and recreation had already happened multiple times to Sauron. For example, it had happened with the fall of the human kingdom of Numenor, when Sauron, caught in the chaos and destruction of the island, was dragged down into the waters of the Great Sea. The most recent time was during the Battle of the Last Alliance, on the slopes of Mount Doom, when famously Isildur cut the One Ring off his finger. Both these times Sauron lost his body, but each time, after having had enough time to restore his power, he was once again able to clothe himself in a physical form. And thus, even the very destruction of the One Ring at the end of the Third Age did not mean death for Sauron, even though, as the captains gazed south to the land of Mordor, it seemed to them that, black against the pall of cloud, there rose a huge shape of shadow, impenetrable, lightning-crowned, filling all the sky. Enormous it reared above the world and stretched out towards them, a vast, threatening hand, terrible but impotent. For even as it leaned over them, a great wind took it, and it was all blown away and past, and then a hush fell. Sauron had poured much of his primordial power into the creation of the One Ring, so as long as it existed, it remained tethered to the Dark Ruler. In this way, even when he wasn't wearing the ring on his finger, Sauron was not directly weakened. However, when he put it on, the ring amplified his power, making him more powerful than before in all aspects. But when the ruling ring was finally destroyed in the eternal fires of Mount Doom, the power of Sauron it contained was also destroyed, and was forever lost to him. Now, all Maiar have a variable but finite amount of inner primordial power. They could use this power to create and turn their thoughts and ideas into tangible reality. But every time they created something, they used up part of this energy. None of this is a problem, as they are able to regenerate it over time. However, this is only possible if their power remains above a certain minimum value. As soon as this lower threshold is crossed, the spirit will use all its regenerating energy to maintain itself, and thus loses all ability to create anything physical, and is almost completely powerless for all eternity. So, in a single instant, Sauron lost an enormous part of his power, and with it, he no longer had the power to spare with which he maintained his form and his works. Barad-dûr crumbled, the towers of the Teeth and the Black Gate collapsed, and all that was left was but a shadow of the former Dark Lord. Contrary to what is shown in the movies, Sauron initially did not appear as a big flaming eye atop Barad-dûr, but instead walked in a physical humanoid form, dark, domineering and terrible to behold. But with the sudden loss of power, he could no longer maintain this form. His body and his control over his works lost, he now, as the story tells us, was only visible as a shadowy figure. Then a fateful western wind, most likely sent by Manwë, the king of the Valar, blew him far to the east. There he was to spend his miserable existence for as long as the future could be seen. This was the fate of Sauron. His body was destroyed multiple times in only 2 ages. Both the first and the second time he returned, became stronger again, and finally clothed himself in a new form. But the third time, with the destruction of the One Ring which held so much of his power, that was finally over. His power had fallen below that lower threshold, from which he would never be able to recover. From then on, all his thoughts were focused only on the loss he had suffered and the power that was almost his. He couldn't think of anything else, and thus would never find the peace he would need if he ever hoped to regain even the smallest slithers of power. His entire existence, the entire being of the once mighty Dark Ruler, was reduced to just this one dream, which will be an impossibility for all eternity, unless unexpected help comes from the outside. Such was the fate of Sauron. He had risked much when he forged the One Ring, and much he had lost when it was destroyed in the fires of Mount Doom. He could have been the God King of Middle-earth, but now he was nothing more than a disempowered shadow amongst shadows. He was nothing more than a harmless poltergeist. Thus we conclude this chapter and this video. Did the knowledge surprise you? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed it and would like to help us spread the stories of Arda to the wider world, then please take a look at our Patreon and consider joining the different ranks of our supporters and have your names appear on screen here, as well as getting early access to our future videos and other boons. But regardless of that, be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified of the next chapter in the Mysteries of Westerness, when we will look at the one man who could have destroyed Sauron but chose not to. The High King of Gondor and Arnor, and King of all the Dúnedain, Isildur. But for now, I have been Irgikor Guruvane, and I wish you all Namarie Meldonjar.